My name is Maya Richardson. I'm 36, and I learned what my family truly thought of me from a hospital bed. 6 weeks earlier, I'd given birth to my daughter, Alara. Then a truck ran a red light. I woke up with fractured ribs, a punctured lung, and a heavy cast on my right arm. My husband was 6 hours away. Someone had to watch my newborn that night. My mother lived 20 minutes from the hospital. I called her. She said no. She gave my husband one sentence over the speakerphone, and that sentence is why you're here. Your sister never has these emergencies. Chloe was on a Caribbean cruise. My mother was at a casino, catsitting. I touched the plastic ID band still cinched around my left wrist and realized something cold. I wasn't a daughter. I was a utility. What I did next didn't involve tears. It involved 4 taps on a banking app. And the $403,000 that followed isn't even the part that broke them. The part that broke them walked through the door 3 hours later, an old man carrying a worn manila folder, and he said something none of them ever expected to hear. I reached for my phone with my left hand, pulled up the automated payments, and canceled them. 4 taps. 20 seconds. 8 years of quiet compliance simply stopped. The screen flashed green. Transfer canceled. I felt no triumph. Just the flat, clear weight of a ledger finally balancing. To understand why 4 taps felt like a release, you have to understand the architecture of my life. I'm a senior financial analyst. I spend my days inside other people's ledgers, tracking liabilities, forecasting margins, and explaining to executives exactly where their capital flows. Numbers don't have favorites. They don't lie. That's a precision I never found at home. For years, I've been the family's load-bearing wall. The steady one. The one who doesn't break, so everyone else can lean. I mistook that utility for love. I didn't realize I was just the structural support they forgot to thank. The transfers started at 28. $4,200 on the first of every month. I never spoke the figure aloud. Not to David, not to Chloe, not to anyone. I told myself it was for my father's cardiologist, the property taxes, the roof that leaked every spring. I told myself I was the only one reliable enough to carry it. But lying in that bed, scrolling through 8 years of archived statements with my left thumb, the arithmetic finally stopped lying to me. I filtered by category, cross-referenced dates, and found it, a $35,000 transfer routed 3 years ago, labeled Dad Medical Expenses. It wasn't a hospital bill. It was a luxury vehicle lease under Chloe's name. Mislabeled. Hidden inside the only category nobody questions. I locked the screen and listened to the steady beep of the monitor. The math rearranged itself. I hadn't been keeping a roof over my parents' heads. I had been funding a performance. A story about scarcity and sacrifice that kept me working, kept me compliant, and kept Chloe's lifestyle floating on a river of my quiet endurance. My grandmother Ruth understood this long before I did. She measured truth in receipts, not apologies. The winter before she passed, she took my hand and said, "Somebody has to watch this family's money, Maya. Your mother won't. So it'll have to be you." I thought she meant be generous. I know now she meant be vigilant. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't call David to complain. I did what I've always done when the world gets loud and dishonest. I opened a blank workbook. I created columns for date, amount, category, and actual destination. I began logging the truth, row by row. Because when words are weaponized to keep you in your place, you don't argue. You audit. And an audit doesn't care about feelings. It only cares about what's written in black and white. David walked into my hospital room at 11 the next morning, unshaven, carrying Alara in her car seat and a diaper bag slung over one shoulder. He'd driven straight through the night. He set the car seat gently on the bed, leaned down, and kissed my forehead without a word. For a moment, the 3 of us just breathed together. Then he whispered, "She's perfect. You're going to be okay." I nodded, but my eyes were already on the laptop he'd placed on the rolling table. I had work to do, That afternoon, the family group text began to buzz on my nightstand. The Reynolds family chat, 12 relatives strong, mostly silent, mostly aunts. I rarely opened it, but the screen kept flashing. Against my better judgment, I tapped in. My mother had posted an hour earlier, a long message that began, "I'm heartbroken to say Maya is being dramatic again and has cut off her struggling parents out of spite." She wrote that my father's health was fragile, that they had given me everything, that she didn't know how she'd cover his medicine now. She added for the audience, "We've always managed on our own, but this is cruel." There it was again. The same screen, the same lie. Except this time, it wasn't my bank app. It was a stage. I held the phone and felt the old reflex rise, the urge to explain, to soften, to manage everyone's feelings the way I'd managed everything else. I set the phone face down instead. Explaining was the old Maya. The new Maya, the one the accident had installed, wanted something colder and more precise. The new Maya wanted the numbers in the room. With my left hand and a lot of patience, I logged into my bank, exported 8 years of statements, and dropped them into a pivot table. This is what I do for a living. I can certainly do it for my own life. I sorted the $403,000 by where it actually landed. And the picture that assembled itself, cell by cell, was not the picture my mother had painted for the relatives. The mortgage payments I thought I was covering had been made 9 times in 8 years, not 96. My father's documented medical expenses, the real ones, the cardiologist and the prescriptions, came to about $58,000 across the whole period. So where had the other $336,000 gone? I filtered by withdrawal location and date, and a cluster lit up like a rash. Cash withdrawals, hundreds of them, almost all within a 2-mile radius of one zip code. I pulled up a map. The zip code was Blackhawk. My mother hadn't been visiting a casino that one unlucky night. She'd been visiting that casino for the better part of a decade on my dime, and a second, smaller stream branched off and ran somewhere else entirely, steady and deliberate. Year after year, I followed it. It led to Chloe. I sat back as far as my ribs allowed and let the numbers say it, because numbers, unlike my family, have never once lied to me. Out of $403,200, $58,000 matched to real medical care. $9,000 touched the mortgage. That left roughly $336,000 unaccounted for. It split into 2 rivers, about $270,000 in cash pulled near Blackhawk, and about $110,000 flowing to Chloe, including that mislabeled $35,000 lease, and another $40,000 filed under Dad's surgery to hide a brand photo shoot in Tulum. I printed the summary to a single page on the unit's bedside printer. 1 clean sheet. The whole 8 years in 12 rows. I didn't send an angry text. I didn't explain or defend. I was going to let the paper into the room in front of the same audience my mother had spent 8 years performing for. And then I was going to walk out and never fund the show again. "It's handled," I said to David. And for the first time, the words felt less like triage and more like a verdict. The hospital door opened slowly at dusk. Grandpa Henry stepped in, moving carefully with a cane he clearly resented. He wore a pressed flannel shirt, buttoned to the throat. Under his arm was a thick manila folder, soft at the edges, bound with crossed rubber bands gone brittle. He didn't offer empty comfort. He just set the folder on the foot of my bed like a man setting down a weight he'd carried for years. "I knew," he said. His voice was dry gravel, steady as a metronome. "I always knew." I asked him what he meant. He tapped the folder once. "About the money. All 8 years of it. About where your mother's been spending her afternoons. About what she told this family while you bled yourself dry." He sat in the vinyl chair, folded his spotted hands over the cane. Ruth had grown suspicious in her last year. She noticed the new car, the casino talk, the way Diane's spending never matched her income. She didn't bother hiding it anymore. Ruth cornered Harold one evening. "Somebody is keeping Linda afloat, and it isn't us." "Find out who." Harold spent 40 years managing cattle operation books. He knows how to follow a number. He found me. He found 8 years of a granddaughter quietly wiring her entire margin into a hole her mother kept digging. Ruth wanted to fix it before she went. She ran out of time, so she did the next best thing. She spent her last clear months with an estate attorney in Boulder. What she signed into motion was an irrevocable trust. This jurisdiction allows it, Harold said, meeting my eyes. The house, the accounts, the land parcel it sits on, they were never Diane's to manage. They were Ruth's. And Ruth left them where they couldn't be gambled away. They bypass your mother entirely. They go to you. And to Alara. I let that settle. The house I'd been funding. The kingdom Diane ruled. It was never hers. Ruth didn't leave a will she could contest. She left a structure she couldn't touch. In this state, an irrevocable trust with a competent grantor is virtually bulletproof against familial claims. Diane could scream, she could hire lawyers, but the paperwork was clean. The ledger was already closed. Before he left, he asked me a single question in that same gravel voice. You want it quiet, Maya? Or you want it true? I looked at Alara asleep in the crook of my good arm. I looked at the single printed page on my tray table. True, I said. He nodded, gathered the folder back under his arm. Then I'll bring it to Sunday. Let her squirm in front of the whole room. Some truths only count if they're witnessed. He was right. I didn't sleep that night. I just watched the hospital ID band on my wrist go soft and gray, and waited for the dinner that would end this. My phone rang Saturday afternoon. The caller ID showed Chloe's name. I answered with my left hand, expecting an apology, or at least a question about my ribs. I got a tour of a sunburned nose instead. Okay, so the cruise was kind of ruined, she announced before hello. My card got declined at the spa. It's humiliating. Mom said the family account always covers me. Did you touch something? I held the phone and looked at Alara sleeping in the bassinet. I said nothing. She filled the silence the way she always does. Can you just fix it before dinner? We dock in Cozumel tomorrow and I have a shoot. I literally can't function without the account. Fix it before dinner. As if my near-fatal accident and her newborn niece's abandonment were a clogged drain inconveniencing her content calendar. I asked her quietly, Chloe, where do you think that money comes from? There was a pause. The first real pause I'd ever heard from her. From Mom and Dad, she said, but it came out with a little upward lift at the end. A question disguised as an answer. The first crack of doubt I'd ever heard in her voice. It's a family thing, right? I told her I'd see her tomorrow and hung up. She wasn't cruel. Not exactly. She was something almost worse, a person who had never once been asked to imagine that the well had a bottom, because no one had ever let her see who was carrying the bucket. I spent the evening preparing. Not for a fight. For a presentation. I folded the single spreadsheet page and slipped it into Alara's diaper bag. Beneath the wipes where nobody would think to look. Then I took the soft gray hospital ID band from my wrist, where it had sat for 5 days, and tucked it into my coat pocket. I wanted it on me. A small, hard piece of proof of exactly where I'd been the night my family chose convenience over care. Sunday morning, we pulled into my parents' driveway. I sat in the car for a moment, gathering myself. The ID band weighed heavy in my pocket. The truth would be on the table. And for the first time in my life, I didn't need to manage the room. I just needed to let the paper speak. The conversation died the moment we walked in. My mother stood by the coffee table, a wounded hostess in a cashmere cardigan, dabbing her eyes before anyone had even spoken. I'm just so relieved we're all here, she began, her voice trembling perfectly for the audience of aunts and cousins. This has been the hardest week of my life. Maya's little accident, thank God she's recovering, but to use it as an excuse to abandon her struggling parents. She let the sentence hang, heavy with practiced grief. Aunt Carol nodded solemnly. Chloe scrolled her phone, sunburned and bored. My father stared at his hands, then my mother turned to me, eyes wet, voice pitched for the cheap seats. I don't understand where this cruelty comes from. Your sister never has these emergencies. The fourth time. She handed me the exact sentence she'd used to leave my newborn alone, unaware she'd just loaded the gun and passed it to me grip first. The room waited for me to cry. To shout. To crumble. I didn't. I reached into the diaper bag, beneath the wipes, and pulled out one folded sheet of paper. I smoothed it flat against the dining table with my left hand and set it in the center of the room. You're right, Mom, I said, my voice level as a quarterly forecast. Chloe never has these emergencies. I'd like to show everyone why. I tapped the page once. This is every dollar I sent this family for 8 years. 403,000. 200 of them. The room went still. 58,000 went to Dad's real medical care. 9,000 touched the mortgage. The rest is what you told everyone you managed on your own. 270,000 in cash, withdrawn steadily over 8 years, almost all of it within 2 miles of the Blackhawk Casino. And 110,000 to Chloe, including a $40,000 lease and a brand shoot filed under Dad's surgery so no one would ask questions. A small intake of breath circled the table. The sound of a story cracking. My mother's performance had nowhere to go. Her hand trembled. That is twisted, she hissed, the tears drying instantly. You've twisted everything. Your father and I never. Grandpa Henry set his cane against the table and laid the worn manila folder beside my single page. The brittle rubber band snapped off. He opened it with unhurried hands. Ruth knew, he said, his gravel voice filling the room more than her tears ever had. She traced it. She couldn't stop the bleeding, so she built a dam. He slid a stapled legal document forward. This is an irrevocable trust. The house, the accounts, the land parcel, they were never Diane's to control. They bypass her entirely. They go to Maya, and to Alara. In this state, with a competent grantor and clean paperwork, it doesn't go to court. It stands. My mother's mask didn't just slip, it shattered. Raw panic replaced the wounded matriarch. The kingdom she'd ruled for decades had just been handed to the daughter she left in a hospital bed. Chloe stopped scrolling. Her eyes went wide, the dawning horror of a girl realizing the well had a bottom, and she'd been standing on her sister to reach it. My father opened his mouth, whispered, Maya's right, Linda, the casino, you know it's been, but one look from my mother silenced him for good. He looked down. I let him go. I didn't argue. I didn't gloat. I reached into my coat pocket, pulled out the soft gray hospital ID band I'd worn for 5 days, and looped it once around the handle of Alara's car seat. A small, hard piece of proof. I stood slowly, ribs protesting, and looked at the room. It's handled, I said. Then I turned, David took the bag, Henry gathered his cane, and we walked out into the cold. I pulled the door shut softly. Slamming it would have meant I still wanted something from them. I didn't. The account was closed. Here's how it settled. Because I know you want to know. The trust held. My mother called 2 estate attorneys. Both told her the exact same thing. Harold had clean paperwork, a competent grantor, and an irrevocable structure that doesn't bend to family pressure. The threats quietly stopped. She and my father still live in the house because the trust allows them to stay for their lifetimes. I'm not in the business of putting an old man with a bad heart on the curb, whatever his silences cost me. But Blackhawk no longer runs on my margin. A casino with no fresh money is just a sad room with worn carpet. Chloe got a job. A real one, at a marketing firm that doesn't care about her follower count. The last I heard, she was learning slowly that a launch you fund yourself feels different than one your sister funds for you. She texted me once, months later, just 3 words, where'd it go? I sent her the same single page I'd set on the table. She never replied. But she never asked me for money again. The family chat went quiet. Exactly as I knew it would. My father calls sometimes, but only when he's alone in his car, voice low, never naming what happened. I always answer those calls. It's not forgiveness. It's just closure. If there's one thing I learned from a hospital bed, a worn folder, and 4 taps on a banking app, it's this: the people who praise you for being the strong one are usually just naming the person they've quietly decided they'll never have to carry. And the day you stop being their bank is the day you finally get to be something better. For me, that was simply a mother to my own daughter, instead of a parent to everyone who refused to grow up. That's my story. 8 years. 1 folder. The truth my whole family buried. If this reminded you to read one statement tonight, or to check who you'd actually call from a hospital bed, take that as your sign. Do it today. If you know someone always cast as the steady one, share this with them. Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.